We're going to be talking for a while, so please grab a drink. Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Hannah. In this week's video, we're going to be talking about everything that I read in July, August and September, because apparently I'm not very good at doing monthly wrap-ups. We're obviously going to be talking about the plots of these books, the vibes, how I found them, would I recommend them, and of course my ratings too. I have a salted caramel oat milk latte here, and I am ready to yap about some books, some of which were wonderful. So anyway, let's start with July. Let's start talking about these books. I have a little stack here. In July, I read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 books, and I had 1 DNF. So let's start with my first book of July. And actually I need to grab my phone because this one I read on Kindle. Also, do you guys like my PJs? I know they're kind of giving Christmas, but I also kind of don't care because they are nice and light and thin. They have gingerbread men all over them and I love them. Anyway, let's talk about the first book that I read in July. I read Goldston by Aveline Knight, and I got this recommendation from Bailey, a dark romance book that was just super fast paced and really easy to read. Goldston was so easy to binge. I almost went straight into the second book, even though like I had a whole TBR at the time. In this book we follow our female main character who, let's just say, she's been done dirty and she grew up parallel to this really rich dark mafia style world. She starts to uncover some things that happened to her mother. And I think we actually go into this book with her having some knowledge that this family, Inferno Consortium, that's what they call themselves, and I believe they had something to do with her mother's death. So we go into this book and she's trying to get justice, revenge. She is feral. She's going in to cause a scene, let's just say. She has sort of like direct relations to some of the people within this crime group situation. I believe that her ex-boyfriend is one of the brothers of the leaders of the Inferno Consortium, and she actually has a thing for his brother. So it's ex-boyfriend's brother, it's dark romance, and there is a huge plot of revenge and justice from our female main character. And if there's one thing about me, love female rage, can get behind that anytime. To be honest, there were some twists and some things I weren't expecting. The end of the book was extremely sort of like, what the hell is happening? I rated this book a 3.5 stars, and I just remember feeling like it was so quick and fun, not too dark. The spice was kind of to my taste as well, which wasn't something that I was expecting in a dark romance book. But honestly, Julian, the MMC, I had a lot of time for him. I really did. I would definitely recommend if you're maybe new to dark romance and you just want something that has a little bit of like a mystery element too, because there are some uncoverings on the way and it was such a fun time. The second book that I read in July was Assistant to the Villain by Hannah Nicole Meara. I picked this up as per Belle. I read this because Belle absolutely loves this series. I had stolen this from my sister's shelves because all I was seeing was Belle talk about this book. And this book literally is exactly what it says on the tin. Our main character, she finds herself in need of a job and she literally comes across the villain in the middle of the woods somewhere, someone who is known as being this really bad guy, and he finds her essentially in the middle of the woods, kind of protects her from dying, and he's like, maybe do you want to wait for me? And she's like, yeah, why the hell not? And I guess it just sort of goes from there. And there is this sort of like plot line of our female main character getting used to this villain way of life and mindset and sort of like uncovering what that world actually looks like and is it as it seems. And then we also have the villain's main issue and his main enemy. That plays a really big part in the plot of this as well. It was just fun. It was a really good time, and people are absolutely right when they say this is extremely cozy. It is very sort of like humorous, and the tone of the writing is very much like you will laugh. And I think I listened to a lot of this on audio as well. Would recommend if you want something cozy, definitely pick up the audiobook for this. Wow, I enjoy this book more than I remember because I actually rated it a 4.25 stars, which to be honest is probably accurate. It's definitely somewhere around the 4-star range. I am definitely intrigued to see what the other books look like, but I feel like it could have definitely been a duology. I know that is it meant to be a 4-book series? The third one came out maybe like a month or two ago. I'm not running to pick them up, but only because I have such a huge TBR that I'm more interested in reading. But yeah, would definitely recommend this. It was a fun time. I then went on to read this humongous bad boy, did in fact tab it too. I had the most wonderful time reading Queen of Shadows. Now this is the 5th book, I believe, in the Throne of Glass series, and this is 100% the best book in the series so far. You literally cannot get through this book without having sort of like action, drama, adventure, some really heartbreaking, harrowing things. Outstanding. I actually can't believe how much I tabbed this book. It makes me really want to just sort of like binge the rest of the series, but for some reason I've put a blocker there because of the tandem read. I rated this 4.5 stars, and literally all I've said is absolutely jam-packed with chaos and brutality. I loved it, and to be honest, that is pretty much all I can tell you, isn't it? Because it's the 5th book in a series. But yeah, this makes Throne of Glass worth the journey, so I can only imagine how the next 3 books are going to be. Hugely loved this. I then picked up Let's Make a Scene by Laura Wood. I did actually vlog my Amsterdam trip if you wanted to see what that looked like, because honestly I had the most wonderful bookish time. Amsterdam was stunning. I bought so many books and I read this in that vlog, so if you want some more in-depth thoughts and feelings, that's where you'll find them. But essentially this book follows our 2 main characters, Cynthia and Jack, and Cynthia and Jack have kind of like a second chance situation going on. So they both worked on a film way back when, maybe like a decade ago, and it was absolutely huge. Imagine like The Holiday, and then 20 years later them deciding that they want to do Holiday times number 2. So everyone gets back together to create this film, and they're not sure whether they're going to be able to make it as unbelievable as the first one was, but they get together, they film this film. They do in fact create the second film, and this book has literally everything that you could possibly want, because you've got a second chance romance, which is literally my favourite trope in a romance book. I love it. You also have dual POV, you have flashbacks and sort of like a dual timeline. We have an enemies to lovers, a workplace romance. I love a workplace romance. I just loved it. My Goodreads review of this literally says, I love everything about this book. You have dual POV, second chance romance, flashbacks, dual timeline, workplace romance, enemies to lovers. I literally have no idea how Lauren Wood managed to do it all so flawlessly. I loved Cynthia and Jack, and I can't wait to go back and read Under Your Spell, which I did in fact do. I love this book, and it's probably like a 4.75 star. Definitely one of those books that I feel like I read at the perfect time, and the fact that my partner bought me it, the MMC is called Jack. Yeah, I love this book, and Laura Wood's writing is so fun and funky. Actually, I do have to mention that one of the best things about this book is the sort of like insight that you get into the world of like actresses, Hollywood, and I really love seeing like the behind the scenes of that sort of thing, of show business, and the things that you and I don't ever really get to see or be a part of. You get the behind the scenes in this book, and it's just wonderful. Really love this book. Definitely one of the highlights of my year in romance. Of course, I just mentioned that I did in fact visit Amsterdam, and this was one of the books that I picked up there, and whilst I was on my Amsterdam high, it felt kind of necessary for me to pick this book up. This is What Happens in Amsterdam by Rachel Lynn Solomon. I feel like this is another example of reading a book at the perfect time, because obviously I had just been to Amsterdam and all of its quirks. It really surprised me, actually. I didn't know how I was going to feel about the city, because I feel like it has extremely mixed reviews. Reading this after falling in love with Amsterdam was just perfect. I literally couldn't have timed it any better. It was just wonderful. I really enjoyed it, and the vibes of this book, you get such a journey of character growth, because our main character, what's her name, I cannot remember, Danny, she decides in her 30s that she's just gonna move to Amsterdam. She's like, I'm doing it. I think she's from maybe Canada or America, can't remember, but she decides to just up and move to Amsterdam and get a job there. She gets to Amsterdam, and you know, you kind of learn just as she gets there that she did in fact have an exchange student from Amsterdam come to live with her and her family when she was younger, and this is kind of their second chance romance and sort of like an opportunity for them to rekindle and speak about what happened when they were teenagers. And honestly, it's just so heartwarming. He really sort of like welcomes her to the city after sort of accepting that she's there. And this is one of those books where you find that both of the main characters need each other just as much, and their impact on each other's lives is just fun and funky. And there's a twist, there's definitely a twist, and it obviously sort of like impacts the third act, some of the decisions that they make. But honestly, I just loved every page of this. I read it at the perfect time. I rated this 5 star, and to be honest, it's a 5 star for at the time that I read it. Would absolutely recommend. Super fun time. And if you've been to Amsterdam or you're going to Amsterdam, pick up this book. And your team, your vibes don't get where the hell you. The next book that I picked up in July was The Crimson Moth by Kristen Ciccarelli. I feel like there seems to be kind of like a 4-star consensus, I think, around this duology, and I haven't actually picked up the second book yet. I think that the two of them probably stand together in that, like, they create this really great story, but this book is very, very much romance and not very, very fantasy. So it is a witchy book, and we have obviously a witch and a witch hunter. The witches in this world are forbidden, dead, not welcome, and obviously the witch hunters are still trying to cull off the witches and be like, bye bye, see you later. But there is our female main character, Rune, is that her name? It's literally on the chapter headings. Our female main character, Rune, she is a witch, and she's trying to save and sort of like get the last together of these bitches. Like, she is really doing one for the team with the witches. A vigilante bent on saving her home, her next rescue demands she caught Gideon Sharp, a notorious witch hunter, unforgiving revolutionary. Gideon, who is the witch hunter, decides to court her because when our witch is not doing witchy things and being an absolute menace, she is pretending that she is an active and present member of society, and she holds all these grand parties. And I think I saw someone say that she's a prostitute, but I really didn't get that, so I'm not sure if I missed it or if they got things twisted. Essentially, he decides to start like fake dating her, and it's really funny because they're both like trying to get one over on the other, but they don't know that they're both doing it to each other. So it's literally like How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. They're both playing at each other at their own game, and I just found that the romance in this book played too much of a part, and we didn't get enough fantasy, politics, society, that sort of thing. I think I said this in my 24-hour readathon. I feel like I really could have done with more backstory about sort of like what happened to the witches, what the deal is with the witch hunters, and why witches are so, you know, unwelcome. I just feel like I would have really benefited from maybe just like an extensive prologue. Felt like a chapter in a big world, if that makes sense. Having said that, I did have a lot of fun, and I think I rated it 3.5 stars. The next book that I read in July, I also read in my 24-hour readathon, and I picked up Spellbound by Georgia Layton. I fear that my issue with this book was that I went in with the completely wrong expectation, because I thought that this book was going to give fantasy, but it actually gives you a Beauty and the Beast retelling. No. Beauty and the Beast? No, it's Sleeping Beauty. It's definitely Sleeping Beauty. I wasn't expecting that from this book, and there is obviously like an element of fantasy in this, but it kind of gives more magical realism than anything else. Like, it's not a big part of it, and I think you should go into this book expecting that it gives kind of like lit fic fantasy story retelling. I don't know, but it just definitely wasn't what I was expecting, because I feel like this cover gives very much fantasy. Also, I just love this beautiful book, and it has actually just come out in paperback, I believe, as well. In a remote castle perched atop a windswept island, a long-awaited royal heir is born. In accordance with ancient custom, a blessing ceremony takes place to bestow the princess with magical gifts along with a terrible curse. Ooh. Except this is not the love story you may think you know. There is no enchanted sleep for the princess and no handsome prince to save the day. Just three women who together concoct a desperate plan of misdirects that changes the course of all their lives. But dark magic cannot be tricked, and as the end of the curse edges closer, each of the women has to make a choice. They can wait to find out if the worst will happen, or they can turn to face the coming storm. The themes that are most prevalent in this book are definitely family and women, and, you know, fighting to survive. It felt like reading general fiction. It felt like you were just on this journey with the characters rather than following a plot. You kind of just like following them through their lives, and I did enjoy it. Probably not the best read for a 24-hour readathon because it was quite slow and melancholy, but not in like an extremely negative way. Maybe I just don't know how to read a blurb and have the wrong expectations, but I did enjoy this book, and I think on reflection I started to think about it more for what it was rather than what I wanted it to be, and I did really appreciate it. I rated this a 3.5 star, and I would actually recommend. Moving on to one of my favourite reads of the year so far, we have Promise Me Sunshine by Cara Bastone. Now, the way that I ate this up, I loved every single word. Every word. I loved everything about this book. Again, something that I feel like I read at the perfect time. Do you know, like sometimes when you know that books contain grief and like extreme themes at loss, you kind of have to go in knowing that you want some growth and emotion, and I definitely did that. I took myself away for the night and I read this book at the beach, and I had the most wonderful time. In this book we have our female main character Lenny. Her best friend has recently died and she is at a complete loss as to who she is and why she's alive without her best friend. It turns out that her best friend Lou actually created a Live Again list with Lenny before she died, and the sort of like main aim of this book is for the male main character and Lenny to go and try and complete this list and learn to live again through grief and loss. I honestly just loved everything about it, the themes, the way it's written and the things that it touches on, how it does it. I just loved every single bit about it, and our MMC, he was also just wonderful. It says Miles sees right through her. He knows a lot about grief and offers her a deal. He'll help her complete her live again list if she'll help him reconnect with Ainsley and his sister. So through Lenny's journey to disconnect with life before she agrees that she wants to try and do this list, she gets a nannying job for the MMC's sister, and they have quite a complex history and relationship with their whole family, and it's all about him sort of like learning to connect with people and almost like go from having no real like skill and understanding of how to just create relationships, and they help each other, and it is wonderful, and I could not recommend this book enough. It is absolutely a 5-star. Obviously I was just feeling grief. I was very much on the grief train because I then picked up Say You'll Remember Me by Abby Jimenez, and I put off reading this when it was released because people were expecting like 6-star reads because Abby Jimenez did wonderful things with Part of Your World, Yours Truly, and Just for the Summer. I love all three of those books, and I actually really enjoyed this as well. I was pleasantly surprised because there was a lot of negativity surrounding the book when it first came out that I just didn't want to be tainted by any of that, so I just waited. I picked it up when it was right for me, and I'm really glad that I did. So we have Xavier and Sam, and I remember one of the main critiques in this book is that Abby Jimenez does like one too many nods to Reese from ACOTAR, saying that he looks like him, but like that is such a minuscule issue when it comes to this book. Like it really doesn't play a big part in it, so I feel like if you're like that cringed out by stuff, then maybe you just need to learn to skim read because I feel like the depth of this book and the themes that it entails are so important, but you deciding to fixate on the fact that she mentions Reese from ACOTAR 3 times in the first chapter, that's too much. Girl, this is a heartbreaking book. Stop thinking about things that don't matter. That was how I felt about that personally. Obviously, I know everyone has their own tastes and I completely get it, but you just skim. You just move on. Anyway, so yeah, this book is about Xavier and Sam is having to move across country because her mum has very late on quite debilitating Alzheimer's, and she has to go and look after her. But she meets Xavier and they go on a first date that is incredible. Sparks fly. They're like, oh my god, are we meant for each other? Are we soulmates? And she's like, that doesn't matter because I literally have to move across the country. And he's like, you must be joking. And that's what happens, and they can't stop thinking about each other, and it's all about what they do. How do they get to each other? How do they make things work? What do they prioritise in life? Because family is obviously so important. Their careers, their friends, and everything else. Like, what part does love play in your life? That is like the main theme of this book. I ate it up. I did. I liked both our main characters. I absolutely sobbed, and I think people really missed the mark with this book. I think that had the Reese thing not been included, people might have spoken more highly of the themes and the way that this book is written, but they just fixated on things that weren't important. And I really enjoyed this. What did I rate it? 4.25 stars. Yes, I did. I really enjoyed this book, and if at any point you've considered reading it but you've seen some of the online discourse, just ignore it, pick it up and see for yourself, because I had a wonderful time crying. I had a wonderful time crying at this book. We're ending July on a little bit of a downer, so I attempted to pick up this book when it was very much at the forefront of book talk and booktube, and Yeah, I tried to read Bury Our Bones and Midnight Soil. It's actually hilarious. My bookmark is still in here from where I DNF'd. So I got to page 193. Do you know how I was speaking about Spellbound and how it's kind of like the journey? It's the friends you meet along the way. That's very much what this book was giving, and I just was not in the mood for that. I needed sort of like fast-paced action, adventure, even some sort of like romance, just something to grip onto, and I just was not sold on the first 200 pages of this book. I wasn't. I worry that V. Schwab's writing is just not for me, because I also tried to read The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, and I just fear that I am not cutesy posh enough to read that stuff. I do not think that this writing is pretentious or posh or anything like that. The writing styles that I look for and the things that engage me, I don't think that V. Schwab is for me. I just found that it was a bit too slow for me and kind of confusing. I don't think you got a lot of background, and like, why are we reading this? Like, maybe, I feel really harsh saying this, but I genuinely felt like, what is the point? Why? Obviously, at the end, I'm assuming that we have some sort of connection, we get some sort of reasoning, but I just wasn't enthralled in the story. I wasn't connected to the characters. I wasn't particularly interested in why they were being so savage and reckless and wild. There was one bit that I was actually really, really interested in, and then someone died. And I was like, right, well, that's that gone then. Maybe I picked this up at the wrong time. Maybe I just need to be smarter and stick with this book, but I didn't do that. So I did in fact soft DNF that book. So that is everything that we read in July. Let's move on to August. I cannot even tell you how long I've been talking. We're going to talk about August. We're going to talk about all of the summery wonderfulness that I read in August. I was flying through romance books in August. We first picked up Ready or Not by Cara Bastone. I knew that I was going to read this as soon as I'd read Promise Me Sunshine. Obviously loving Promise Me Sunshine, I did in fact pick up Ready or Not as soon as I could, and I loved it. This book is also a 5-star, like, no doubt. I obviously love Cara Bastone's writing. This book is infamously accidental pregnancy. The dad in this accidental pregnancy is not the MMC. It's definitely a different dynamic, and I just loved it because you have a childhood best friend sort of thing. Well, it's kind of childhood best friend's brother. It's best friend's brother, and it's kind of like friends to lovers, but it feels very second chancey. It's just stunning. I actually really enjoy accidental pregnancy because this dynamic was so different. It just put a twist on something that I already know that I like and can be done really well and make me just love it and make me want babies like right this second, which I do anyway, so that's not too hard. So my review of Goodreads of this book literally says, if you are pregnant, and I cannot stress this enough, read this book. If you love romance, read this book. If you literally don't know what you're doing with your life, read this book. 10 out of 10. I found that the relationship and the journey that our two main characters go in this book gives soulmates, which is my favourite thing. Like, if you can make me feel like that one person is really meant to lift you up and belong in your life and just go through all of the stuff together, I'm gonna love it. And that's exactly what this book did. I was obsessed. And the journey of pregnancy in this book is so interesting. There's so much complexity happening outside of our female main character having a baby in her belly. There's so much going on outside of it that, like, it's kind of like just having like people all around you trying to impact what they think you should do in comparison to what you think you should do, what you think is morally right, what you think is best for the baby. It's so complex and extremely well done. I loved the romance, I loved the pregnancy journey, and I love our main characters. What was his name? How dare I forget his name? Shep, I love you. He is hilarious, he's fun. He's literally like golden retriever loveliness. I was obsessed. Anyway, I've spoke about this book too long. It's 5 stars, pick it up, loved this. The next book I read was also very summer-esque, and I picked up Every Summer After by Carly Fortune, and I'm sure most people know what this book's about, but essentially we have a group of kids that get together. They have these lake houses, and 2 of them in particular sort of like strike up a relationship, and it kind of is meant to give soulmate vibes. Like, it definitely is, like childhood friends to lovers, and they feel like they've gone through this whole journey, like they've grown up together, but it just didn't land for me. I'm going to be honest, I didn't love this book. I think there's kind of like a mystery as to why they broke up in the first place when they were younger, and we have a scenario where the MMC where the FMC has to go back to Barry's Bay years and years later after all the dramas happened, and you're sort of like going around uncovering why she had to leave in the first place or why she never went back. You get flashback chapters of the two main characters falling in love and the sort of like tumultuous relationship that they had as teenagers. You can just imagine how it's very sort of like turbulent to read, because obviously these people are teenagers, they're extremely hormonal and they are not very mature. So it was definitely sort of like a journey of that. And then you have people that are then meant to be grown, you're reading about them as adults, and it feels like nobody's grown up. That's just how I felt about it. I just wasn't obsessed with their love story. I felt like some people deserved better and some people were created to be really like villainous when I don't know if they were. I don't know. But also the actual reason why they broke up, would things get better after that? Would they? I don't know if they would. This book for me was, I think I gave it a 3.5. Yeah, I did. I appreciate, yeah, I was definitely gripped, and like there were certain parts of it that I felt like I could fall in love with, and then it just fell flat. I wasn't obsessed with it. I wanted to be. Love Barry's Bay though. Definitely a really great summer read, but yeah, just not my favourite. We have obviously just spoken about Miss Laura Wood. I picked up Under Your Spell afterwards because I was obsessed with Let's Make a Scene and I wanted more 5-star romance feels, especially after Every Summer After. This is a chunky book, you know, like for romance books I find that they are a bit chunky. I feel like this is, it is 450 pages, so it's not too big. Under Your Spell, we have our female main character who she's just going through it. It's very typical. She's lost her job. Her ex, who's just dumped her, has a new fiance who's also pregnant, has his life going for him, whatever. The FMC is going through it. She feels like she doesn't know what she wants, who she wants, what her purpose is, and all that sort of jazz. And she ends up getting a job sort of babysitting a rock star. And it turns out that before she gets that job, and she doesn't realise that he is who he is because she kind of keeps out of the rock star scene and the music industry. She has a one-night stand with him and has the best night of her life, and then leaves, doesn't really think anything of it, and then she gets this job babysitting him and she's like, oh wait, I know you. We had sex like 3 nights ago and now I have to babysit you because apparently you can't be trusted to be by yourself and you don't know how to write an album and all of these people are relying on you to do something and you're just not doing it. So I'm going to do that. And that's sort of like where this book starts. You also have this theme of family and these very like tumultuous and rocky relationships between the fathers in this book. And yeah, it's just, it's kind of messy because as with Let's Make a Scene, you have this like Hollywood scene. In this one, you have the music industry, which obviously has its own pressures and issues in itself. And it still was entertaining to read, but you just didn't get as much as of the drama that you got in Let's Make a Scene. This felt like it was very secluded, like they go somewhere so that he can write this album, and they felt very much sort of like out of everything. And I would have preferred it if it wasn't that way, but love Laura Wood's writing and I had a really great time and it was just cutesy and fun and I liked the romance, loved the MMC too. It was a 4-star. It's probably more of like a 4.25 just because I really, really like Laura Wood's storytelling and writing. So if you want some cutesy romances that are not necessarily like too summery, Laura Wood, you should go. Obviously, I was just fixating on certain authors at this point of the year, and I then picked up One Golden Summer by Carly Fortune. I did read Every Summer After because I wanted to pick this up, because this has been sort of like very much on the agenda for Book Talk this summer. Everyone was reading it, and I just wanted to be involved, to be honest. It follows the brother of the MMC in Every Summer After, and I'm going to be so real, like, you do not need to read that book in order to read this one. To be honest, part of me thinks that you maybe shouldn't, because he's painted as a little bit of a toxic, nasty boy in the first book, and you get a lot of him as a teenager, which probably doesn't really accurately reflect how he is as an adult. So I went into this book with a kind of tainted view of Charlie, our MMC. But essentially in this book we have our FMC Alice, who is going away with her grandmother to Barry's Bay to look after her, as I believe she's just had some sort of hip operation or she's had an injury, and she's taking her there to rest and just love summer. And they go back to Barry's Bay, which is somewhere where they used to go as kids just every now and again, not sort of like they had a lake house, but they just used to go visit the lake house. Alice is extremely sort sort of like cutesy, fun. She's just like a super sweetheart, and Charlie has his reputation of being, like I said, a little bit of a bad boy, a bit of a player, and it is just very wholesome and sweet how they come together. Alice definitely helps Charlie sort of like come out of his shell, speak about some of his traumas and his history, and it was just a very nice look into what Charlie's story is, because you definitely didn't get enough of that, because it wasn't about him in Every Summer After, but I just didn't like the way they painted him in that, to then have this be a much better book, in my opinion, with a much better romance. And yeah, I did actually really enjoy this. I rated it a 4.25 stars. And also Barry's Bay, love it. I'll say it again. Next book that I picked up was Problematic Summer Romance by Ali Hazelwood, and I'm going to keep this one brief. It wasn't for me. I think I rated this a 3-star. I fear that I am not the audience for this book, because I feel like there was too many occurrences where she was saying please and he was saying no. He was obsessed with the fact that she was so young and inexperienced, and it was inappropriate, and she's immature. Like, he was obsessed with the idea that she was too young for him, and I feel like if you're gonna fixate on that so much, you maybe shouldn't turn your back on that and just be like, actually no, yeah, I loved you this whole time. It just creeped me out a little bit. I fear that he wasn't very nice. We didn't really get too much insight into his mind and like why he thought the way he did, why he said the things that he did. Obviously, if you haven't captured from what I've just said, this is an age gap romance, and the setting is stunning. We're in Sicily, in Italy, in the middle of summer for a wedding, and it was gorgeous. Loved the setting. I think we got a few flashbacks in like the first few chapters as well, but I just feel like I was not sold on the MMC. So yeah, I rated this a 3-star, and not my personal favourite from Ali Hazelwood, but I know that some people really love this. Some people think it's her best work, but I don't know, maybe we read different books, because I'm not sure that he should have given it. Anyway, let's move on. I finally put the romances down and I picked up a fantasy, and I picked up Legendborn by Tracy Deonn. I loved this book. I was extremely excited to pick it up. It was very highly anticipated for me, because I've seen so many people love this series and I wanted to get into it. In this book, we have this like society of people who are descendants of King Arthur and King Arthur's knights, and that plays like a really big part in the magic system in this book. It felt kind of like sci-fi fantasy-esque. I really enjoyed the magic system and the lore in this book, and how the author used all of that to create this world. I found it so interesting. We obviously have our main character. Is she called Brie? She is. I remembered. Brie Matthews. You follow Brie at her first sort of experience away from home. So I think it's kind of like college-esque, but gives a university lifestyle. So she's on campus. She's living away from home for the first time. There are societies and older people around her, but she has to go to classes, and she's doing all of these things, these academic things, but she's extremely distracted because she starts seeing things that she definitely shouldn't see, and her mother actually passed away. She just kind of struggles. Like, she always wanted to go to this college. That was always her goal, but her mother didn't want her to go, and she didn't know whether she was going to do it or not. But her father finally says, right, go do it. Let's commit to this. Let's go do it. So she does. And then when she gets there, weird shit starts happening. I feel like it's just the perfect world building and magic system. I really loved Brie as a main character. Obviously this is YA, so she is quite young, but it was still so fun. And I can imagine watching this on screen and absolutely loving it. Now, I've put 4 stars on Goodreads, but this is probably like somewhere between the 4 to 4.5 star range. I really enjoyed this book. You should definitely pick this up. Fitting for the season like that we're in now, not necessarily in August, I decided to pick up Hidden Pictures by Jason Rekulak, and this is one that I'd also seen Belle recommend. She loves this because this book is full of drawings. You get this throughout the book, where the main like kid in this book that we're following loves to draw, and this book was just a journey of gaslighting, to be honest. I feel like the blurb and the synopsis of this book, and sort of like the first 150-200 pages, they just set you up to be completely disappointed. I just felt really let down by the journey that this book took, and like the outcome and the ending and the twists and stuff felt like it was a little bit of a cop-out, so I didn't enjoy that, but it was spooky as hell. We have a girl who, she is an addict. She used to be addicted to drugs, and she struggles for work, but her sponsor gets her a job nannying this kid. She gets to the house and it turns out this kid loves drawing, but things start to get weird. His drawings get really odd. She finds him doing weird things, and yeah, it is extremely creepy. I could not read this in the dark. Like I say, as the plot went on, I just felt like I was gaslit into thinking it was something that it wasn't. So yeah, didn't enjoy this as much as I was hoping I would. I rated this 3-star, and I would say that that's probably, yeah, I stick with that. This is a 3-star read for me. Just didn't love it. Our final book of August, I picked up a sports romance, because if there's one thing about me, I read a lot of romance books but don't tend to pick up a lot of sports romance. I picked up Unsteady by Peyton Corinne. Now, this was inspired by Brie. I have seen that she has read the 2 books that are out currently in this series, and she really enjoyed them. And I think the specific thing that people like about this series is the mental health representation and the deep dive into anxiety, ADHD, and different things like that. Now, I did actually really enjoy this book. I speed dated this book in my speed dating my TBR video, and it was just really intriguing off the bat. It's not what I believe you would consider your typical sports romance, because our MMC is going through some style sort of PTSD. He's struggling with an incident that happened to him at the very start of the book. It's the prologue that you read that he has this injury, and he meets our FMC, and it's all about their sort of journey together through their life struggles. So his with his injury, and her with everything under the bloody sun. That girl has a really hard life, and it was definitely a struggle to read sometimes because I just felt for her so bad. I really appreciated how the hard issues in this book were addressed, and I really enjoyed it. I liked the romance, and I feel like we've set up like a good cast of characters to keep reading about this series, so I'm definitely excited to pick up the next book. I think I rated this a 4-star. I did. And this was the last book that I read in August. I'm going to run out of bloody daylight if I don't hurry up here. Right, we're moving on to September, finally. I had a wonderful, wonderful reading month in September. Definitely my best reading month of the year so far. I'm not sure it is in terms of 5 stars, but I read a lot. I enjoyed lots of books. I read a really diverse range of books too. I just had the most wonderful time. Let me see how much I read, because I forgot. I read 13 books in September. So let's just start off, shall we? The first book that I read was We Are All Guilty Here by Karen Slaughter. And this is my first Karen Slaughter book, very much inspired by Beth Morvant to pick up this author and this book, to be honest. She's one of her favourite thriller authors. So I was just extremely intrigued, because not only do I just love the cover and the colour scheme that we have going on here, but it sounds super interesting. Welcome to North Falls, a small town where everyone knows everyone but nobody knows the truth. Emmy Clifton has lived here all her life. She thinks she knows her neighbours. She's wrong. She thinks it's just another hot summer night, a night like any other. She's wrong. When her best friend's daughter asks for help, she thinks it's just some teenage drama. She thinks it can wait. She's never been more wrong in her life. As the town ignites in the wake of a girl's disappearance, Emmy throws herself into the search, but then she realises you never really know a town until you know all its secrets. Is Emmy ready for the truth? I've learned that the theme of Karen Slaughter books is that like she has these sort of like series where they have all of these crimes that take place in one town. So my understanding is that this town that we're in here is going to sort of like become part of her new series, and that this is the first book in that series. We obviously follow Emmy through her journey of sort of like understanding people's secrets in this town. I believe we get a few different perspectives. I believe we get some sort of like detective perspective, and we are trying to follow and trying to figure out what's happened to these missing girls. So we have obviously like this detective story as well, and you get this sort of like, I'm not sure if it's FBI and like profiling scenario, but we definitely get some like outsider's perspective as to what could have happened here, because they can't find these girls. I'm not sure what happened. And essentially it's just a whodunit. I found that it was extremely intriguing. I was definitely invested, and I had a really great time. I don't know if it's one of the best thrillers that I've ever read, but in terms of the storytelling and like the grippingness and how engaged I was, it was brilliant. And I would say that this is probably like a 4.25 to 4.5 star read for me. I had a really great time, and I would definitely consider reading the rest of the books if she continues to write in this town. Would definitely consider picking those up, because yeah, this was really fun and would recommend. The next book, I decided to pick up A Tongue So Sweet and Deadly by Sophia St. Germain, and of course Emmy has had the internet just screaming to read this. My partner kindly got me the 3 books that are out in the series for my birthday, so I picked it up and I had a wonderful time. I did in fact tab it. I had the best time, I really did. It is different, I feel, than your regular romantic fantasy book. Half-Fate Alessia could have had everything, literally. Since her magic allows her to compel anyone to do her bidding by merely looking into their eyes, the world was at her feet. But after a tragic accident, she's thrown into the Fae King's dungeons and forced to swear a blood oath to him, binding her to his service. 5 years later, she's living amongst humans in Elo and has created a life for herself as best as she can, with the king's promise to call in his debt looming over her. When he finally comes to collect, she's made to infiltrate the human elections to determine whether the current region is involved in the strange things happening in the land of the Fae. With the promise of freedom from the king's claws, Alessia is determined to see it through. Liberty is within reach so long as she can keep the lethal Fae guard watching over her from eliminating her before she unearths the information the king seeks. But as she grows closer to the brooding human region and his secrets begin to unravel, Alessia realises greater forces may be at play and she might stand before the choice between her own freedom and that of a nation. We're going straight into you're going to do this for me and you are under my power and you might think that you have all of the control here, but you are going to do this for me. And essentially we are watching a spy go into this sort of like political race to who is going to be the next regent because it's time for a re-election. Completely out of the blue, like surprisingly to everyone in the human realm, Alessia goes up and she's like, I want to run for regent. And the way that people have to gain power in this politics war is through like entering this sort of trials thing where essentially they have to all go and live together and they have to undergo certain tasks in order to prove that they are worthy of being regent. And it's just so interesting to watch that play out. It's definitely different to what I've read before. We also have a little bit of a love triangle situation, which I wasn't expecting. It's kind of like crumbs, like it doesn't even feel like a love triangle. As you can imagine, twists and turns, things are mad and crazy, and it was really good. I had the best time. I believe on Goodreads I rated this 5 stars, but I would say it's probably more of a 4.5. Obviously I tabbed it because I had the best time and my emotional journey is very much represented in how much I tab a book. So yeah. I then went camping for my birthday and I picked up Wildfire by Hannah Grace. I did in fact read this in a vlog, so I'll keep it very brief, but this is obviously the second book in the Maple Hill series and I'm reading the series backwards. I had a really great time with this. I thought it was really sweet and I really liked our main characters. There's a lot of like family drama and toxicity in this book, so if you're triggered by any of that, honestly I feel like you won't be able to read 90% of the romance books that I read because that tends to be such a huge theme. Like family is such a problem in lots of the romance books that I read. I think I rated this maybe like a 3.75, 4 star. I don't really have a lot to say about it. It was just fun, great palette cleanser. Don't have a lot to critique on it either. If you're wondering what it's about, our 2 main characters, I think they have a one night stand. Yeah, Russ and Aurora end up spending the night together and then it turns out that they have both signed up to do this summer camp where they're camp counselors for children and things like that. So they both end up there and they're like, oh, we just slept together. It was really fun and perfect for while I was camping because obviously that's what they're doing and it was just fun. It was fun, it was cozy, it was perfect for when I wanted to read it and I had a great time. It was definitely like a 3.75 star read for me. In the same blog, I picked up Phantasma by Kaylee Smith. This book is about Ophelia enters Phantasma because essentially she thinks that her sister has gone in there. Their mother's just died. Ophelia's been transferred this power of the family and she has a bit of a falling out in the aftermath of their mother's death with her sister Genevieve, and she thinks she's gone into Phantasma, so Ophelia enters Phantasma trying to go get her. When she gets in there, she kind of allies with this phantom ghost guy situation. He says, I will help you win Phantasma if you can help me get out of here. They form this alliance essentially to help each other try to get out of Phantasma and also try to find her sister Genevieve in the process. And this book for me was just long. Like, it's far too long. It's just under 500 pages. I feel like it could have easily been a 350 page book. Like, it was so drawn out for me. I don't look back at my reading experience of this book and think, oh, that was so fun and I was so engaged, because I wasn't. I think some of the trials were definitely interesting and they felt kind of like high stakes, and the House of Phantasma itself and what that is, definitely an intriguing sort of premise, but just wasn't sold on what Ophelia was doing to get Genevieve back. Like, I feel like the main reason that she goes into Phantasma and then what we actually see while she's in there, they just don't align. So didn't love this. I think, I rated it a 3.5 and I definitely feel that way. It's easy, it's fun, probably just a bit too long, and I just think that the things that I was looking for in this, which was plot, they were there, but just not as much as I would have liked, and we had more romance and spice than I would have really wanted from this type of book, because in a place like Phantasma where things should be incredibly high stakes, I feel like we sort of missed a lot of the point, personally. Picking up random romance authors this year has worked out really well for me, and one of those examples is definitely The Slowest Burn by Sarah Chamberlain. This is described as a foodie romance. So our MMC has won a cooking show, he has been a chef for however many years, and he gets this book deal. Our FMC is a ghostwriter for cookbooks, so they get paired together and they sort of uncover all of each other's toxic traits and issues and, you know, that sort of thing. Like, they almost kind of like just repel each other in the way that they work, and they have to find a way to work together and come together to create this book. The FMC Ellie, she is a widow, so in terms of how she approaches the romance, it is definitely a little bit more complex than the MMC, and also she has extremely sort of like good relations with her widow's parents. So I don't know if it's widow or what. Is she a widow or is she a widower? I'm not sure. Their impact on her life and her relationships is definitely explored in detail in this book, and it was just really great and easy. I think I read this in a 24-hour readathon. I had a really great time. It surprised me actually how much I enjoyed it, because I wasn't really sure why the hell I was reading a foodie romance. Not something that you see very often, but I did have a really good time, and I think I rated it a 3.75 4-star, somewhere around that range. In said 24-hour readathon, I read this book and I had the absolute time of my life. Out of all of the books that I have read, like, in these months, if I could just wipe one clear of my memory, wipe the slate clean and read one again for the first time, it would be this, The Goldens by Lauren Wilson. This is just the journey that you go on in this book. I knew when I read the synopsis of this book that it was going to send me west. Like, it was going to mess me up and I was going to be really torn on how I felt about it, and that is exactly what happened. I don't know why, but the themes of this book, not something that you see very often. So let me just read the back to you. Chloe has always dreamed of becoming a best-selling writer. Then she meets the enigmatic influencer Clara Holland, and at last, Chloe has something to write about. They bond instantly and Chloe moves into Clara's mansion, but as Clara's fame skyrockets, she starts behaving strangely, hosting increasingly wild parties, complete with bonfire rituals and moonlit river baptisms. Clara opens up her home to other girls desperate to live like her. The media calls it a cult, and soon Chloe begins to hear unsettling rumours from Clara's past. After one spectacular party, a girl goes missing and the rumours take on a sinister new meaning. If Chloe can't escape Clara's influence, she may be next. When I read this book, I didn't read the blurb, but I did read the prologue, and it sets you up perfectly for this book. You know that you're entering a story where you're going to be all encompassed by teenage female rage. You're going to be obsessed with friendships. You're going to love your friends more than you've loved anything else on the planet. You're going to put them first. They're going to absolutely send you when, like, betrayals start happening and your loyalty is questioned, and it's just wild. Honestly, it was just the best reading experience. I think that my enjoyment of this book really stems from my sort of like history of friendships when I was young, and the loyalty that I have had with friendships as I've grown up. I think that that's one of the main reasons why I really loved this book, because I felt like I was in Chloe's shoes and I could also see where Clara was coming from, but it's just absolutely twisted. It is so wild, and I hope that if you pick this book up that you read up on some more reviews, see how other people feel, because I feel like my personal experience with this book is exactly what it is. It's extremely personal, but I had the best time. You kind of know what's going to happen, like you really do kind of get it just from the prologue, but the journey of how you get there and how the story is told is just phenomenal. It's a little bit like Titanic. You know what happens at the end, but you go through the journey and you're just, honestly, it's great. This was a 5-star read for me. I loved it. Moving on. We're still in 24-hour readathon territory, and I picked up The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston. This is my first book by this author, and of course I have heard of The 7-Year Slip, and is it not another love story or sounds like love? I don't know. I've heard of her books, and I know that some people have their favourites. Some people absolutely love 7-Year Slip. I picked this one up off a charity table and I wanted to read it because it felt very much like the perfect read to get into spooky season, that transitional time, because this is a little bit of a paranormal romance. So the Dead Romantics is about a ghost writer, another one, Florence, and she is struggling to write a book on behalf of someone else, I think, and she gets a new editor, and he's a little bit like, will you just crack on, like I really don't have time for this, and then he dies. But for some reason, whatever reason, he comes back as a ghost, and you do start to understand the reasons why Florence can see him as you go throughout the book. And it's definitely an interesting sort of premise, isn't it? That you have this one character that can see ghosts and their spirits, and she can interact with them, and she's the only person that can see them. And it's just definitely interesting to sort of go through that journey of figuring out why he has come to her as a ghost and what the purpose of their interactions are and things like that. But you also have an extreme sort of like theme of family in this book, and sort of like loving what you have and being supported by the people that you love. And that was definitely my favourite part of this book. I did really like the romance, but I was more interested and intrigued in sort of like the surrounding family and the role that they played in our FMC's life, because I just found it so sweet and wholesome, and it really helped me to sort of reflect on what I have and just be really grateful, which I think we should all do every now and again. You need to read something that makes you grateful for what you have, and that definitely happened when I read this book. I can't remember what I rated it. What did I rate it? This, probably on reflection, is a 3.5 star. Like, definitely not my favourite romance book ever, because like I say, when I think back on this book, not obsessed with the romance, like that doesn't stick out to me, but everything surrounding the romance definitely worked, and that's what stays with me for this book. So I would recommend it, but would I pick up more of Ashley Postman's work? I'm not sure. Let me know in the comments if you think that that's something that I should do based on this. Finally, we're going to talk about this bad boy. So I was extremely lucky enough to receive this book. And when I say receive, I wasn't sent this. My mother bought me it. I was showing my mother and my partner while we were away camping that I loved this cover. I think it is beautiful. The end papers are stunning. The hardcover is beautiful. And I just love, honestly, I love this book. We have some silver sprayed edges, and why have I not read Quicksilver yet? That's what I just keep saying to myself. And when I saw this, I was like, yeah, I'm going to buy that and I'm going to read it. Then my mum bought me it because she's wonderful, and I finally picked it up. I did a silly thing. I started reading this book. I think I got about 150 pages in, and then I paused and read 3 other books for a 24-hour readathon. So I feel like I didn't read this book in the best way, because I stopped reading it and then picked up 3 other books and then came back to it, and I was kind of like coming in and out of this book, reading it, like reading 50 pages, coming out of it, going back to it, and I just feel like that is my own fault. But I did still really enjoy it, and I found that like the first 150 pages I was obsessed. I was obsessed with the writing. I was in the world. I was so intrigued, engaged, obsessed. Like I really did love the first sort of like third of this book. And then when I caused a problem by picking up other books, my interest in it sort of like dwindled, but I truly think it was my own fault. You get so much in this book. Like, obviously we're following the FMC, who gets herself in a bit of a sticky situation at the start of this book. She is a thief because she comes from a part of the world where, you know, you've got to do what you can to survive. They have rations of water that is like 3 drops a day, that sort of thing. So yeah, they're done dirty, and she gets herself in a little bit of bother. And then let's just say she comes across the MMC of this world, who is called King Fisher, and he is a complex character. I really like Kingfisher. I do. I think he is definitely flawed, but I was kind of obsessed with him. When I think back on this book, I remember literally everything that happened. I remember why it happened. I remember all of the details of the side characters and the villains and the twists. So to be honest, whilst I was reading it, I felt like I was getting taken out of the story, but on reflection, I still have such a connection to this book that I can only really say that it does get a really high rating. And I don't know if it's necessarily a 5-star. I would say this is probably a 4.5, because I am definitely intrigued to pick up the next book. I appreciated that at the end of this book, throughout the last like 100 pages, when things get wild and crazy and like reveals start happening, the reveals end up giving you more questions. But thankfully, the way that it was written meant that we did get answers to questions that they were creating, and then we got more questions. But it wrapped up enough through like the journey of the story and the questions that we had throughout to then create new questions for us to then move on and be intrigued to read the next book. So essentially that was done really well and I enjoyed that. Kingfisher, love you. The FMC, she was great. The tone was fun and funny, and yeah, I just really liked it. So yeah, 4.5 stars. I really glad I finally got to this. Also read the next few books in reading vlogs, so I'm going to try to be quick about this as well. I read God of the Woods by Liz Moore, and on reflection, whilst I was reading this book, I felt a little bit like I wasn't really sure what the point was, or maybe that it wasn't quick enough, or that we weren't getting like answers as like much as I wanted. But on reflection, I feel like this book did a really great job at creating this huge cast of characters, this whole journey and story and investigation of what happened to these children. I just really enjoyed, and I think on reflection I can say that I can just really appreciate the character development and the plot development, the pace of this book. I think it could be viewed as slow, but I now think that it was just perfectly done, if I'm honest. It's not like the most like wild and crazy book and the sort of book that has you on the edge of your seat, but it kind of like pulls at your heartstrings, and I really enjoyed it. I think that this book is probably a 4.25 star read for me. And if you haven't heard of this book, well, I watched every single person read it within like a week period, like 2 months ago. And then when it came out in paperback in the UK, I was like, okay, I'll buy it. On the back here it says, when their 13-year-old daughter Barbara goes missing at a summer camp, all eyes fall on the Van Laar family. They're cold, rich people, they own the camp, and it's happened to them before. 14 years ago, their little boy Bear vanished without a trace. 2 children lost in the same wilderness. Is it a tragedy or is it a crime? The back of this book kind of makes you feel like you're going to be set up for this like really fast-paced, action-packed adventure, but it's not. It's a very slow-paced like journey of character development and slowly moving like detective mystery investigation. But it's good. It's really great. I had a really great time with it, and obviously if you can't tell, on reflection I've decided that this was actually perfectly done for what it was, and I'm going to rate it a 4.25 stars. I then moved on to Heavenly Bodies by Imana Eriu, and I fear that I also did this book dirty because I listened to a lot of it on audio. I was vlogging at this point, a vlog which I didn't get to control how fast I read this book. So at one point I had to read 300 pages of this book in a day, and I consumed a lot of it on audio to achieve that because I was working, and I feel like it just sort of like I let myself down. I let the book down by doing that because I don't feel like I was connected to it as I could have been if I had just read it. In this book, our female main character is captured by the enemy kingdom, and she's taken to be a weapon because she has certain powers that they believe will make her extremely valuable in achieving some of their political goals. Essentially, that's like the bare bones of this story. I found that I can't even say that this is due to the audiobook, but you don't get a lot of our main character, what's her name? Is it Alara? Alara's like home kingdom. You don't get a lot of that in this story, and I feel like we missed a lot of her history and background in this book. I just feel like I needed a little bit more from that. I feel like it's so romantic. This book is a very sort of like fixated on the romance, and I think I could have done with probably some more background, some more world building. It kind of felt as well like some of the people in this world, they just had power to spare. And when I say that, I mean like magical abilities. Like some of the things that Alara could do, like they just stacked up. This woman is invincible, and that's kind of the point. But there were other people in the book as well who also had these crazy wild powers that just made me think, wow, like why does everyone have this? That's what I mean about like the world building and stuff. There's not much explanation as to why people have all of this power and all of these magical abilities. That was just sort of missing for me. But I can't even say I had a good time because I ruined my reading experience when I read it all on audio. So maybe one day I should reread this, but I'm not going to run to pick up the second book. It just fell a little bit flat for me. I gave this a 3.5 stars. A little bit of a genre change and not something that you see a lot based on what I've read and what I do read. I read The Wedding People by Alison Esbach, and this was also on my 25 books I want to read in 2025. In this book, our main character, why do I think she's called, I wanted to say Rebecca, she's called Phoebe. Phoebe is ready to, she's done. Like, she wants to be done, gone by. I'm not going to spoil, actually, why she's there, what's happening, but essentially, yeah, she wants to, and she decides to book a hotel and she wants to go do it. She's planned out the perfect night of how she wants to go out. And she gets to the hotel and there's a wedding and she meets the bride. She tells the bride why she's there because she's like, fuck it, why not? And the bride is like, you're absolutely not doing that. Sorry, no, that is not happening at my wedding. I've paid so much money to be doing this. You are not ruining it for me. And the bride is just an absolutely insane character. But you then go on this journey of these two characters that are polar opposites, really. You have Lila and you have Phoebe, and you go on this whole journey. I really, really enjoyed this book, and I feel like I could live in this world for 500 more pages. I really enjoyed this sort of like stream of consciousness style of writing. This is very general fiction. This is sort of like a deep dive into the psyche and sort of how people think and feel and the impact of other people and expectations and just the way that your mind works and the way that you see things and how different everyone is. I really appreciated this book for what it was, to be honest. It's definitely not something that I read super often, and I just liked that I got to live inside this sort of wild experience along with these two characters. I loved it. I think I give it a 4.5. It's definitely like a 4.25. I really enjoyed this. Oh my god, we're on to the final book that I've read. I've been talking for so long. If you are here at this point, I'm gonna want you to comment a tree emoji, please. As for the last book in this video, which is People Watching by Hannah Bonham Young. Also read this in a vlog, so let's be as brief as possible. In People Watching, our FMC looks after her mother, who has Alzheimer's dementia, and her dad, who is obviously older. They run the business together, but they have to look after their mum, and that is our FMC's priority. She is so family oriented. She doesn't want to move away. She doesn't want her own life. She's really happy where she is. Enters Milo. Some of his family have moved into this town that, is it Prue? Yeah, Prudence. I want to say that's her name. Prudence, yeah. They've moved to Prudence's town, and she is a little bit sort of like taken aback by this new presence of who is Milo, because Milo is this extremely confident, eccentric character, and essentially what she feels is her absolute opposite. He's lived life, he's travelled, he's full of tattoos, he's grizzly, and all of this sort of thing. And they're kind of like polar opposites, but Milo takes a liking to Prue and things just sort of go from there. And as per usual in a lot of romance books, and specifically Hannah Bonham Young's, we have some external factors sort of influencing their relationship, and they have their own separate struggles, and they go through this journey of family together, essentially, is what happens in this book. I didn't love this book because it got to the point where Milo just sort of like fell off for me. I wasn't into it anymore. I think it was some of the spice. I just wasn't obsessed. And I actually think that like the third act conflict is hard, but it's not necessarily the fault of the two main characters. The way that that was written for me, I don't think I liked the way that that was done, because of course sometimes there are external factors that impact relationships, but I don't feel like we need to be setting those up in romance books. Like, I want to root for these characters and you're just going to throw in problems that they don't deserve. Why? Yeah, I didn't love it in the end. I give it a 3.5 stars. Definitely not my favourite Hannah Bonham Young book, but so easy to read, and I would always recommend Hannah Bonham Young because I think she is wonderful and I love her writing. It's so easy to read, atmospheric, fun. Yeah, read Hannah Bonham Young. Maybe not necessarily People Watching if you want a 5-star. My 5-star reads from Hannah Bonham Young are Out on a Limb and Out of the Woods. Loved Out of the Woods, and I've definitely spoken about that on here before. But yeah, 3.5 stars for People Watching. We're done. We did it. We finally got to the end of everything that I read in July, August and September. If you made it this far in the video, thank you so much. Thank you so much for watching. If you have listened to me yap about books not very well in the past however long this video is going to end up being, thank you so much. I would love to know if you've read any of these books. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe. If you have any book recommendations for me or things that you would love to see me read in a reading vlog, please put them down below, because I am vlogging literally all the time. I'm constantly vlogging my reads for you guys. So yeah, thank you again so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next one. Bye.